I've been shooting a little bit of B-raw on the Ursa Mini Pro. I come from kind of just doing ProRes because way back when that was like the easiest mode to shoot in on the Ursa Mini. And then B-raw came out and I was already comfortable with ProRes, so I was like, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'll deal with ProRes because it's fine. I've never had a problem. Highlights have always been there. I've had plenty of dynamic range, resolution, everything's been great. Why do I need RAW? It seems like it's gonna be complicated. Thankfully, in my testing, it's actually been not that complicated at all. B-raw has edited really well. It's great. I did a video kind of in my initial impressions or walking through it, but I wanted to do some more showing kind of the differences between B-raw and ProRes as it relates to like the high end and the low end versions of those. So with B-raw, at the high end you have 3:1 compression, on the low end you have 12:1. With ProRes on the high end you have XQ, and on the low end you have ProRes proxy. Very different file sizes, different data rates. What's the actual difference though? This is a shot of my lovely wife who graciously stepped in even though she didn't want to be on camera. So I filmed her as well as a little clip of my son who I think made his first appearance on my channel in my initial GH5 review. He was much younger then. So he's gotten quite a bit older. So here he is kind of sitting handsomely as I'm, pointing a camera at him, shooting some test footage. I wanted to get skin tones. I wanted to do shots that resonate with what I think a lot of people actually film. In my other video, it was kind of a sunset. It was a last minute, just quick test as the sun was setting. And I was like, oh, I'll capture that for, the highlights. But it ended up not even being in the film mode. It was in video extended. So for this one, I want to do a little bit better, do some controlled lighting, have actual skin tones and people in the shot. So we can take a look at these differences between ProRes proxy, ProRes XQ, and then B-raw, 12:1 and 3:1. I think the results are kind of interesting. So here you can see the shots, and I'm going to just scrub through these real quick. Again, in Premiere at least, and if you're using DaVinci Resolve or something from some other, if you're using Final Cut X or whatever else, like that's fine. Use whatever NLE you prefer. I do imagine DaVinci Resolve would be the best solution for Blackmagic Raw since it is a Blackmagic product, but I'm using Adobe Premiere because that's what I'm comfortable with and that's what my whole team uses, so we can all kind of work and collaborate together. But Resolve is probably the way to go, although this is a MacBook Pro and it plays this footage just fine. There's no hiccups, no issues. It plays smooth, seamless, and this is 4.6K. Not a struggle for the MacBook Pro in Premiere, which I would expect maybe it would be. Thankfully, it's not. Plays just as well as the ProRes stuff, which is I'm great to see. So here are the clips. We'll go through them. That's B-raw 3:1. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the frame the compression there. So that's ProRes XQ. And then we've got ProRes proxy there as well. So we can take a look. I did throw a LUT on here. So if I pop that on, you can see what it looks like colored. And this is the Leeming LUT that I pulled on here. And let me just go through the settings here real quick. So it's the Leeming LUT. It's for the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. So the Leeming LUT, there isn't one for the Ursa Mini Pro. So this isn't maybe as pixel perfect as it could be, but for some baseline adjustments, I threw it on here so you get an example of like what it kind of looks like right out of the box. Of course, with color grading and color correction, you can do it however you like, make it look the best to what you prefer. It's very, very subjective. So rather than getting into like what I think looks good, I just wanted to throw a LUT on here sort of designed for Blackmagic and their kind of Generation 4 color science. So that's the baseline LUT is on there. And then there's also a creative LUT also from the Leeming pack that you can throw on there. So you can see the difference of the base LUT. So if that's as shot, put the base LUT on, and then you can do the creative LUT. And I kind of like how the Leeming stuff is set up that way, where you use the base LUT to kind of get it into proper color, and then there's some of the creative effects that can be easily added on from that point. So if you don't like how this looks, totally fine. You can color it however you like, but we can see both shots here. And as we skip ahead, Premiere will catch up. So we've got, some color on here, and again, before and after. If you like brighter highlights, fine. If you like darker shadows, fine. It's very, very subjective. Do it however you like. Just wanted to do baseline LUT stuff. So hopefully you can see, as I'm skipping through here, do you notice any difference between the different codecs? Is there anything standing out to you as being strange or odd? one way or the other? No, you're not going to notice a whole lot. Granted, this is, YouTube compression we're dealing with. This is a windowed mode on Premiere. So I'll pop it up full screen here and we'll go take a closer look. Is there any difference here you're noticing significantly between ProRes Proxy and ProRes XQ? I'll give a few more seconds for you to really evaluate the differences between ProRes Proxy and ProRes XQ. And granted, ProRes Proxy is like 1/10 of the file size. So you would think that it's going to be just trash compared to XQ. But you noticing anything? Anything standing out? No, not noticing too much? Okay, well, how about we look at BRAW, maybe BRAW 12:1, and then BRAW 3:1. 12:1, 3:1. Oh, 3:1. Anything standing out? Okay, well, like how about this shot? So BRAW 3:1 versus BRAW 12:1. Anything? I'm keeping it static. I don't want to play back. I don't want any YouTube compression to mess with the motion or anything. Just trying to give you the best quality we can look at. Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in to 100%. Okay. I'll keep a little bit of the shirt in there. That's 12:1. That's 3:1. Any differences? Any differences? No, I know I'm kind of being silly here and just kind of making it excruciating going through all these, but there really isn't anything noticeably different for these types of shots when you're dealing with these different compression styles. ProRes versus RAW, Proxy versus XQ versus 12:1 versus 3:1. Most people, I think, and we're doing some color correction here. It's not like we don't have anything on there. We're just looking at the camera. It's like, no, we're putting a LUT on there. We're converting those colors. If you had to go more extreme, would it be helpful to have RAW? Yeah, potentially, maybe. If you had to recover more highlights, yeah, maybe it might be beneficial. But just looking at the footage right out of the camera with a LUT, same LUT is applied to everything, right? So I've got this one adjustment layer. I'm not doing individual color correction. They all come in basically looking identical. The one thing I will say that this doesn't account for is highly detailed shots. Maybe there's someone out there thinking, yeah, but it's a face and it's, the background's all blurry. If it was a landscape and there was tons and tons of detail, you would need, the higher data rates. That may be true. However, a lot of people don't always shoot that way. And if you know that going into it, you can pick and choose your codec or your compression based on what you're shooting. So if you need the crazy high data rate because it's a super detailed shot with, everything is sharp, everything is in focus, it's this beautiful landscape and you want every bit of detail, you don't want any of it lost to compression, sure, throw it into a higher mode and capture that. But if you're doing something like this with like a face and, blurry background, you can record at the highest data rate you want. You can record with the least compression you want, but also don't feel bad if you can't because the budget doesn't account for it. This is what I talked about in the other video, in that some of these modes don't make sense for certain budgets. If you only have a couple $1,000s for the project, well, it doesn't make sense to put all of that into a giant hard drive just to store all the raw footage, and then no one gets paid. You can't afford anything else because it's all spent on hard drives. So really take into consideration what the project calls for, what the budget is, and calculate it that way. I actually did a breakdown spreadsheet of all the different record times for each of the compression ratios. And with the test shot I did, it was like, oh yeah, like there's not really much of a difference here. And then even more so here. Make your own judgments, make your own decisions, but don't feel the guilt of needing to, upgrade your codec or your compression just because it's like not the best. Sometimes if it's a cost thing, for sure, shoot a little bit lower. If you have the budget, shoot a little bit higher, of course. But don't feel like the differences are so drastic that you're going to ruin a shot because you shot it at ProRes Proxy or you shot it at 12:1. It's just not the case for the most part for most shots. Again, not talking about landscapes and fine detail, but I think most people shoot, footage that looks similar to this. It's faces, it's people, it's, close-ups or it's medium shots with blurry backgrounds, because that's what looks cinematic, or what most people associate with cinematic stuff. And then, yeah, if you have a wide shot, bump up the compression or bump up the ProRes if you need to. Not taking into consideration, highlight recovery and that kind of stuff, and just the functionality of RAW, which maybe I should talk about briefly, that when you're looking at this stuff and you're in, Premiere, let's say, that's where you can do it. With the ProRes stuff, if you click on the clip and you go to the master tab for the clip, there's nothing there. If you go to the RAW clip and you go to the master tab, you have all the RAW camera data. This is the Blackmagic RAW plugin for Premiere. So you can change the clip settings, and you can switch the color science to Gen 5 or Gen 4. You've got tons of flexibility here. Just changing the white balance even with dialing in the number is so nice compared to doing it with color correction. Like, you can, but just dialing in the white balance you want, just helpful. It's nice. So the RAW workflow, I think the fact that you can edit it as fast as you can, it's kind of nice to just be able to change some of these things on the fly, like your ISO. Let's say, oh, I want to drop it down to 200, or I want to bump it up to 3200. For whatever reason, being able to make those adjustments to exposure to white balance on the fly with the RAW files is a lot better, and a significant upgrade from ProRes. So that's the one thing I would say. If you're worried about playback speed and performance, the B-RAW stuff plays back fine. The ProRes stuff plays back fine. So you do get the nice benefit of being able to change all your camera settings if you're shooting RAW. So if you shoot B-RAW, that's the one thing I would say is valuable out of all of this. Shoot RAW, because the playback works great, even on kind of a MacBook Pro, something basic. It's not anything super high end. And, don't feel like you're losing all this data and resolution and compression if your budget doesn't call for it. You can definitely get away with a lot with the lower end stuff, so you can kind of make the most of your day, make the most out of your cards. You're not just filling up hard drives full of data that you don't actually need at the end of the day. And I think that's what is valuable doing these tests. I'm going to keep doing more, testing it out, seeing how it goes, but I probably will switch from ProRes to B-RAW, just because the playback is fantastic, and those RAW settings are really, really helpful in a lot of different situations. So if you haven't shot RAW or B-RAW, definitely test it out, because it might surprise you. You're not losing anything. If anything, you're gaining a few extra features that you just don't get with ProRes.